Who's hanging young hero besides your head and spirit? That soul is saying something profound, so let them hear it.
Welcome to Giant Size Violence, a Toku-Comics podcast. I'm your host, Tommy, and joining me today is James Santana, a fellow podcaster and Toku-Comics writer that's doing some exciting things in the realm of indie comics. He's a host of Android's Amazing podcast, where he and co-host Hunter Van Leerp have been going strong for over 200 episodes, sharing insight on the world of comics from the perspective of a comic shop worker, and interviewing creators in the industry, some of whom you may recognize from this show. He and Hunter have also been helping to give a platform to indie creators by organizing and editing the Unknown Heroes comic anthologies, as well as his recently formed studio, Toku USA, dedicated to tokusatsu-inspired comics and creators. He's also written his own comics like Supergroup and World of Nebulon, the latter of which currently has an ongoing Kickstarter campaign that you can support at the time of this episode's release. Here to discuss the upcoming comic and his podcasting work is today's guest, James Santana. Welcome to the show, James.
Hey, thanks for having me, and it's so cool to be on the other side of the interview for once.
Yeah, we're giving both each other that experience for the first time. Loving it.
It's really cool, and thank you so much for this. And yeah, I am a podcaster, a dad, a husband, and yeah, a big Toku fan that loves comic books.
So I know you've also described yourself as a comics historian in the past. So as this Toku comic lover surrounded by comics, what made you decide to finally make the leap to start creating your own comics?
Okay, so what happened was the pandemic happened, and we had time, and I got extra cash. Our store was shut down. I worked at a comic shop called Android's Amazing Comics in Sayville, New York. I was a customer first, and then I started working there part-time, where I still had another full-time job just to help out and pretty much get paid in comic books, which was awesome. I was using money I would get from there to pay for my week's pull. And then, yeah, I became full-time there. I quit my other job. And then I've been there now 8 years, almost 9 years. And so the pandemic happened. And Hunter and I were at the store. Our store was shut down. And we've been talking about wanting to write a comic book forever and not ever kind of like neither one of us really had the money at the time. Or when one of us did, the other one didn't. And we wanted this to be like not just us pitching our like dream goals and dream stories. Like we would send each other like, oh, here's my Spider-Man pitch, or here's my Booster Gold pitch, and we'd laugh and we'd talk. And one day I was just like, let's really do this. Let's sit down and do this. So I came up with Supergroup. I wanted Supergroup to be a take on like the world opposite of superheroes and focus on their supporting cast. My boss, the owner of the store, always puts it the best this way. We were talking about Jeff Johns one day, and he goes, what do you think makes Jeff Johns such a good writer? And I'm like, I don't know. I just like his stuff. And he goes, he takes a square and turns it, and now you have a cube. And I've taken that kind of to heart on anytime I take a story. So I was like, we can write a generic superhero story, but it's been done before. Like everyone has a dream superhero story. Like it's like, oh well, I can't write Batman, so I'll just make up my own vigilante. So I wanted to take Supergroup and thought of Supergroup as like, let's show the world through the eyes of the people that live in that world. And we were just like, sure, we had COVID money and we're bored. And we were like, let's go find artists. And it became a thing.
Now, could you expand a bit on that? The idea of Jeff Johns takes a square and turns it into a cube. Like, what are you looking to like add to your comics when you try and take that same idea, or what do you mean by that?
So the best example of that is if you look at Green Lantern from Jeff Johns' run, he takes the idea of why would Abin, a Green Lantern who can fly through space with a ring, be using a plane and crash lands on Earth? Because that's the original origin from Showcase 94 with Hal Jordan getting the ring from Abin. Abin crashes to Earth in a rocket. The ring finds Hal Jordan. He goes and he becomes the next Green Lantern. But it doesn't make sense when we've seen for years Green Lantern can fly in space and all this other stuff. So Jeff Johns was like, well, maybe he couldn't use his ring because he was, kind of on probation. or suspended because he was going against the Guardians and he was going after like a self-prophecy. That's why he was flying a plane. He took like a kind of stupid question, like, why would a Green Lantern be flying a jet? And was like, here's the answer to why he's flying a jet. And that's kind of how I approach comics now when I write or come up with an idea. What would make this not a generic superhero story? We see those all over the place, especially in the indie community, where it's like, oh, well, that's just Batman with extra steps. That is just Green Lantern with extra steps. Give me something unique. And I want to take Supergroup, specifically Supergroup, and be like, hey, this is, it's the other side of the superhero universe. We see every comic through the eyes of every superhero or whoever the lead superhero is or heroine is. I wanted to be like, well, what happens if you worked at a Starbucks and your coworker is constantly late and you're the one that has to pick up the slack, or like a bill or a car flies through your job and you're left cleaning it up. All the while your coworker's the superhero that put the car through your job. How do you live with yourself and live in a world where all this is happening? And that's what Supergroup is. It came from what happens if we put them all together and all these common sidekick tropes or supporting character tropes and put them all together in like a therapy group to talk out their stories.
And as for that central narrative device of the support group, did you and Hunter do like any research into real world support groups and therapy groups for like how you wanted to structure that?
Little background, a little bit was from my own stuff, a little personal. It was when I was a kid, I went to NA meetings. I Not to go deep into everything that happened in my life, but it's like a support group for kids of alcoholics and of drug users and stuff like that. And that's how I first got to know it. Growing up, there are people that I've known now that are actually really good friends of mine, that gave me insight that attend NA meetings now, along with my dad. So I kind of got like insight from people that actually go to these things and kind of how it works. I know in Supergroup, I don't know if it was in the copy that you got to read it. There is a prayer in the beginning, which my friend wrote because he took it because he goes to NA meetings. So he took the prayer that they say in the NA meetings and he changed it for this. So we did a lot of like, hey, this is kind of how it's structured and it's meant to be, it's really good. Also, I watched a lot of the show Mom, so I got to see a piece of it like through a smaller comedy scale, and how media deals with it and have my own real world experience on top of that. I kind of blended it all together, which would be not too heavy as a reader to be like, oh, great, this could be a very sad, dour series, but also like, hey, there is parts of it where it's kind of goofy and stuff like that. So I took a lot of stuff from mixing all that stuff together.
And at least the version I read very much ends off as if the story is going to continue or the next person's about to share. So with this open ending, like, are you planning to return to the world of Supergroup in the future?
Yes, we have 3.5 issues done of Supergroup already. Each issue will focus on a different character, sharing their story. We're 3.5 issues in of a 4 issue series. So yeah, that should be coming out hopefully, if the earliest this August, the latest early next year, which will be issue 1 of Supergroup. Right now, we're in the process of repitching some stuff, and we did get picked up by a small publisher, but some stuff's happening behind the scenes I can't talk about yet. But it should be August, the earliest, early next year, and the latest.
Yeah, congrats on getting a publisher, though. That's huge for one of your first comics.
It's my second time getting this exact book being picked up by a publisher.
Hmm.
Funny story. We had pitched this with like 6 pages done. That's all we had gotten done at the point. And we were just like, let's go do this. So we were bored. And we're like, because we were like seeing this and like looking up how to do comic submissions and everything. I won't name the publisher because of stuff, but we got picked up. We did our here's image, big picture. Of course, we knew that wasn't ever going to happen, but you try anyway. And we did Boom and Dark Horse and all these other guys. And then we got picked up by this publisher. And they were cool. And we were submitting pages and we were going. And we are like, all right, cool. Email, email, email. And then one day we were emailing them and be nothing. Like an update, like, hey, here's more pages. And then nothing. They're like, hey, here's more pages. And then nothing. And we're like, what's going on? And then one day I'm like, hey, Hunter, do me a favor. 'Cause I was on my way to work. I'm like, do me a favor. Can you email them? Because we had just gotten our pages from Fran, our artist. And we were like, I haven't heard anything from like the last 2 months. And we've been sending pages to them. What's going on? He goes, I'll email them. He emails them. We get a email going, "Hey, I no longer work for them," type of thing, blah blah blah. And I'm like, "You have to go to this new editor." I'm like, "That's weird. You didn't tell us you were changing editors." And then we got a kind of stalled email going, "Hey, we're shifting focus and moving. We're putting a halt on all comics right now." And we got stuck in this limbo for about a year, and we couldn't work on it because we didn't know if we were staying with them. Because they pretty much told us, you can either leave right now, take your rights, go, and we'll cut you up your contract, or we'll hold on to your contract, and when we set up our new place and we evaluate, we'll let you know that. So we waited it out. It was supposed to be like 6 months. We waited, didn't hear anything back. 7 months, nothing. 8 months, nothing. We're getting into the holidays now, and I'm like, I'm emailing them, no email. Sending them an email, no email. A different editor, a different editor, different editor, getting things like, "I don't work there anymore," bounce back emails, nothing on social media, like complete silence, no DMs. I'm like, what is happening? I finally got an email from their new editor, who was our original editor all the way back from the year and a half before that, going, "Yeah, I don't work in that division anymore, and yeah, no, we're dropping your book." And cool, we're like, thanks. He told us who to pitch it to. We pitched it them. We didn't get picked up by those guys. So now we spent last holiday just pitching out, and we didn't get picked up. And then a friend of mine, a customer of mine, runs his own publishing place, and he's going to put our book out through Kickstarter for us and do all the fun stuff and go from there.
Dang, that sounds like a harrowing look into the world of getting an indie comic published, but wow,
Hmm.
that has to be hard to see like your baby like that just hanging out there in purgatory.
It really was. It was more of like we couldn't do anything because we couldn't pitch it out again while we were in this waiting period. Because if they kept us, then we were screwed and we'd have to drop the other contract that we expected for, which would look bad for us as new creators. And then on the other half of that, we just didn't want to pull out because we didn't want to start all over again. And then no one picked us up. Either way, we still ended up at zero and having to start over again. It was just more rough, and to find out a lot of the smaller publishers that we've been dealing with or had dealt with are like in these weird similar spots doesn't help, but it does give a look into kind of like the indie industry right now. And I kind of like talking about this story because I want people to know the truth behind putting out a book through a publisher isn't just like, "Hey, I'm pitching a book, they like it, awesome, and we're golden." It's more of like, "Hey, they ask you for 6 pages, but you should really be halfway done with your series by the time you pitch a book." It's like stupid things you learn along the way where it's like, yes, if I dumped another X amount of money into the book to finish it earlier, would they have put it out faster? Yeah. I just couldn't be that irresponsible to drop that much money in one sitting and the hopes that it would even sell. So I was being responsible, and that's what happens.
Now, how is this experience shaping the way you're going about putting out World of Nebulon now? Like, I see the Toku USA label on this one, so are y'all doing all of this yourself, or are you still going
Yes.
through anyone?
No, this is all just me and Hunter and our artist Gaff and our color CJ. And so Toku USA was kind of birthed at the same time Unknown Heroes was birthed. They both come out of the BS of the being an indie creator
Mm-hmm.
and all the struggles and hassles, and like I wanted something to be like, all right, there's no strictly Toku like stylized or Japanese inspired comic book publisher that exists, because I get it's not a big seller in the United States, but like there are fans that like both. That like I like manga and anime, and I love my comics, you know. And there is a cross section that deals with all of it, and there's no market or place for that. So I wanted to create something, a space for creators to kind of flourish, where you get to own your own rights, you get to do all your own stuff. You own your own rights, so you get to pay for your own artists. You get to do whatever. You can pick your own team. You can do whatever. The only thing I would do is make sure content's right and it's grammatically correct. And it's not like if you tell me it's a kid's book and I see boobs in it, I'm like, clearly that's not a kid's book, and do that. But other than that, like I wanted a space for people to be free to create what they want, inspired by things that we grew up with. Like, yeah, Boom Studios has Power Rangers, of course, and but now we see things like Radiant Black and Marvel putting out the Ultraman books and Ultra Mega. these are all Toku books that, besides Godzilla, that are flourishing very well in the United States market, and I feel like there's more room for that here. We just never get to do that, and because there is a stigma from publishers going, no, 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 you can't do that unless it's the licensed version of Power Rangers, then it works. You know, you can't do your own version because it won't sell, and I'm like, no, you can. It will sell. It just can't be a ripoff of Power Rangers.
Hmm.
And that's kind of where it all came from. That's why I wanted to create Toku USA as a means for people to, and Toku creators and artists, even if it's just if it ends up being like artists just wanted to like do pinup books and art books in their style, of characters they design. I would love to put that stuff out. I want people to understand and love Tokusatsu like I do, because there is a big misinformation about this genre where it's, oh, it just campy, it's all kiddie. Like, it's not campy and kiddie because the 1990 show was adapted that way. It doesn't mean it's all that way. Sit down and watch an episode or two of something like Kikaider or Ultraman or the Heisei era of Godzilla or Kamen Rider now. It's not just kiddie campy pow zam nonsense of the 60s. These are deep stories with deep lore, with violence and heart and story great storytelling that kind of gets lost in the American audience because they just see their comics and go, oh well, that's stuff my kids watched growing up. So I just want to spread that to other people.
With this Toku USA studio, I've heard word that former guest of the show, Nathan Marchand, has also been in talks of potentially making a story with y'all. So can you
Yes,
give a glimpse
yes.
of that at all, or is it too early to share any details?
So I'll give a piece of it. There's going to be two. I know before I officially say anything, Nathan has been announced on all the socials for Toku USA, so it's not like a surprise. Nathan is doing currently two stories planned. I can't say confirm if it's gonna be more, but I know one's gonna be a one shot spinning out of his Monster Island Film Vault series, focusing on the magical girl from the series. And the other one is right now it's in rough draft form, but it might be an Ultraman inspired giant hero series. Other than that, that's going to be up to him to talk about a little bit more in the future before things change and from plot and rough drafting to finished product. But I know the Magical Girl one is the first of his two books coming out.
As far as your book and the ongoing Kickstarter campaign for the World of Nebulon, or the preview of it at least, what can you tell us about this World of Nebulon?
Okay, so World of Nebulon is what happens. I took the idea of, again, the square to the cube stuff. I took the idea of, yeah, aliens invade all the time and they lose normally at the end, or heroes emerge, and there you go. That's how the birth of the heroes happen, and they become monster of the week type of stuff. I'm like, what happens if aliens invaded and they won and they just stayed here and they took over the Earth? What happens now? And the world of Nebulon is titled that way because it's a showcase of kind of all the stories that will be in this whole brand, which is like instead of call we behind the scenes in editorial we call it the Nebuverse, but for everyone else it's going to be called the world of Nebulon. So anytime you see that title on a book, it's going to be a showcase of stories within that universe. So we have Nebulon, our titular hero, Jono, a scavenger from Arizona Bay, a fictionalized city from an old sci-fi novel, which I got inspired from the song "Enema" by Tool. Um, I listen to a lot of music, and music is a big inspiration to me. But yeah, so Arizona Bay is a fictional town. It's what happens if the West Coast was to sink into the ocean, and Arizona would be the start of the West Coast. So he's from a fictionalized town called Arizona Bay with his brother Davis, and they're both scavengers in this post-apocalyptic alien takeover conquered Earth, and he is the main focus of Nebulon. He is bound to a space creature known as Mayet, M-A apostrophe A-T. If you know Egyptian mythology, he is named after the god of justice. And yeah, they bond, and very Venom-like, very Yu-Gi-Oh! Yami Yugi style type of thing. They become Nebulon. And after a big event that is kind of foreshadowed in the Kickstarter book, he has decided to travel to the Throne City, which is happens to be New York, and to take over the Spiral Tower. And yeah, it's a story about revenge, and he's a traveling hero, a wandering hero. He is kind of everything I loved about Tokusatsu. He's very inspired by Kamen Rider and things like Kiter, that wandering, traveling hero style stuff mixed with a cool transformation sequence.
So yeah, I know outside of Nebulon that we have a few snippets of stories of other characters, crossovers featured in other books even.
Yes.
So yeah, tell us a little bit about the other stories that will be told in the world of Nebulon.
When we created Nebulon, the world of Nebulon in general, we made it as Nebulon being the main hero, and Kaiju Man was a add-on last minute. He was never meant to be a bigger thing than like the one shot, which was the crossover between the two of them for Unknown Heroes Volume 1. What happened was me and Hunter sat down and then we get idiot together and we decide to like just spit ideas out and it became what happened. So Jono is the viewpoint of the everyday survivor. Ryuji is the point of view of the government the what happened to the government and what happened to the all the Earth's forces.
Ryuji being the kaiju man that
Kaiju Man.
turns into a giant
Yes.
lizard monster.
Yes. What happens when the governments were all kind of like shutted down into like little holes? What happens? And so Project K was born. Project K, the kaiju, is a mix between Giant Hero and our love for Godzilla. All the characters are homages to all giant monsters, with Ryuji being Godzilla, Mothra being Mothra, Jackie being King Kong, and Matt, who we meet in the Project K Origins one shot, is actually based on, I forgot the dog's name from Rampage, from the video
Ralph.
game Rampage. Yes, he's based on Ralph from Rampage. But yeah, so Project K is like what happened to the governments of the world and what did they do now that they lost?
So, with a number of these characters resembling things like Godzilla or Mothra, or even like your take on Kamen Rider, at any point in the pitching of this world or of this comic, had the idea been to make something of like a tokusatsu Justice League? Or is this something that just kind of happened naturally as you were making your own characters?
So yes and no. So my grand dream would be to do anyone that's under the Toku brand or friends. Actually, my dream was to take all my friends that write or people I know that write Tokusatsu book and do a massive crossover and just do that as my big Justice League book. But really what it was, I wanted it to be focused on when I first started this was like, all right, I want to really just do one character with Jono. And then we happen to create the team with Project K. And behind the scenes, there is another team that exists. It's called the Quartetta. It's four girls that go to the Garlics Training Academy, and they eventually become like Power Ranger style girls. But yeah, I always kind of want a big team. There is a big thing that's going to happen later on, and hopefully we get to that part in the story, which is the final battle what ends the series. Because the series is actually told is we broke it down into three main volumes, which are three, 4 to 5 issue stories that will tell the entirety of the main story, besides like Project K and Mothra and Quartetta. Um, it's and Feather and Flame, but there is like a big Justice League moment, an Avengers moment in a couple of these stories, but I don't have a solid team yet. And I would love to do that at one point, and hopefully in the future I get to write a Toku team book, like a real one made of different people together.
So I know that this initial book is like it's marketed as the World of Nebulon preview. So
Yes.
I'm curious what made you decide to go like that route of kind of giving us the first few pages of these larger stories as opposed to like short anthologies or like a collection of several 6 to 10 page stories.
Right. So what I did here was took the two short stories we had done for Unknown Heroes, put them together, and I wanted to do at least Nebulon's origin, which is in here, and Masra, which actually is my artist story. He came up with her and he wanted to do her story. And this is his first take into writing. So I was like, yeah, sure, we'll put it in the book. The reason why I want to do that because I knew there were people that probably looked at the anthology when they were in Unknown Heroes and were like, I like this, but I don't like the rest of the stuff that's in this book. So I don't want to back it. I'll wait till they do their own thing. And vice versa. It was meant for people that had backed the project, but only did one of the two volumes and didn't do both. So they were able to get the other story, plus some other cool stuff that we're just doing ourselves because I knew the anthology was pricey. I see other anthologies, even when like Marvel and DC do those like like Marvel Voices or like DC does like monthly or annuals. Other ones like they're doing the spring break one coming up. Like some of those stories are really cool, but is it worth me spending $15 on this book where I like one story in it instead of, if I just got that one writer's story? This is kind of what I want to do and showcase the world without worrying about, hey, if you like this, also, it's a sampler. It's like, hey, if you like Monster, you don't have to read the entire world and all the books to understand or like the character. You can, if you read and go, I want to do her story when her book comes out. I'm buying that book. I want to back that campaign. Or like, oh, hey, I like Project A. I want to do that. Or if you get lucky, and if I get lucky, you'll like it all and buy them all. But that's what I want to do. I wanted to showcase each of the stories and each of their takes and pieces of the world without going too deep, without then having to raise the price of the book to being from a $10 comic book to be like a $25 graphic novel, mini graphic novel.
So notice the World of Nebulon special on Android's Amazing Podcast. You mentioned there several of the big ideas of this comic that really got me invested in this world. And honestly, that podcast episode sells me on the world about as well as the preview book itself does. So I'm curious about, like, what is the next chapter of this look like? Like, what's the next singular issue or volume you release?
So what we're planning on doing, if this Kickstarter is successful, is we're gonna launch issue one of Nebulon, Night of Justice, then Mossra issue one, then volume one of Nebulon total, which would be issues 1 through 4 together, and then Project K issue one, Mossra issue two, and then Project K volume one, and then we would go from there because Project K in timeline order, it go Project K Volume One and Nebulon Volume One happen around the same time. And yeah, it's we want to launch it as kind of every story gets a one shot like issue, which is the first issue. So in case you don't want to buy a whole trade, you can at least get the first issue and have it in your hand and read it. If you like it, you'll come back for the rest. And the trade is there for people that just want to buy trades. And eventually we will release each one individually, like issue two, issue three, issue four, individually.
Now that we're at a point where it seems like more tokusatsu comics are coming out now than ever before, like between Power Rangers having like 3 ongoing books, the entire Black Market Narrative, Radiant Black universe, and then spin-offs like we get with Ultraman and Kamen Rider and elsewhere. What do you hope to bring to the world of tokusatsu comics with Nebulon that we haven't seen before?
I want it to be, and I hate to say this, but like what Radiant Black is doing in the sense of like I want to show that American audiences can write and understand tokusatsu, and you don't have to have a background using a licensed character to tell a tokusatsu story. I want to be able to like, hey, it's cool and fun, and yeah, it's not on the screen, it's not your Power Rangers, but it's your character, and tokusatsu is more than just camp and kiddie. It's a genre. Live in the genre. If you want to do Henshin Heroes, I love Henshin Hero stuff. Like, do it. If you got a cool story, like I was 2 seconds away of creating like a version of Just Society where they're all Henshin Heroes because of this how old school they were. Especially Hour Man. But I love tokusatsu. I love this stuff. I want to showcase and show that it's not just Power Rangers 19, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers 1 through 3, and that's all you got to, or the poor American ones that we did make that went nowhere, like Mystic Knights of Tiranogue and Tattoo Teenagers, stuff like that, where they were blemishes. That's what made people look at those and go, oh, well, that's what American create. That's why we don't do it. But then we look at how these brands have lasted since the 60s in Japan, and they're no different from our superheroes here. I want to show you like, yeah, Tokusatsu can be on the same par. You can look at Superman and go, Ultraman. Okay, cool. I understand. He's an alien that came from a planet that is a symbol of hope. Awesome. Let's do this. Tokusatsu doesn't need to be relegated to kids or to, in the eyes, at least in the eyes of the American audience, to children or a specific generation, or to, oh, well, it's just like those kids that watch anime or read manga. That's what their thing is. They can't sit at the same table as Batman and Superman. I want them all to be at the same table. We can all share the same love of superheroes because at the end of the day, they're just superheroes, and I want that to be my legacy.
I wanted to talk a little bit about your work at Android's Amazing Comics and how you feel that, like, working in a comic shop and being surrounded by comics all day for your day job, like, how would you say that's impacted you now as a comics writer?
Oh man, massively, massively. So you can't see where I'm recording right now, but my bedroom right now is full of like 3 bookcases worth of comic books, long boxes, statues. But yeah, it's a massive influence. It kind of shows me the do's and don'ts of comics and how to kind of sell comics because I sell comics as my day job. Like my job isn't just to like put out books and put out toys and talk to customers. My job is to sell people stuff. I've been doing sales since I was 17 years old, from working as an Easy Second Staples to selling beer to people at a beer distributor to now managing a comic book shop. My job is sales. Like if I can tell you what interests you, or I can find out what interests you, I can point you in the right direction, and you won't be disappointed. I it but like looking at some of the stuff, I'm like, how does this make it to the shelf? Like sometimes I'm like, this art is atrocious. Not even like, and I'm a very, very huge believer in art is subjective. Things that I like, you may not like. There are things that you like that I may not like. There are things we both can be like we don't like and someone else may love. I look at this stuff and sometimes it's just objectively bad. But I'm like, how did this make it to the shelf? And like reading and like this is how you format a comic book. This is how you format a story. If you're telling a modern comic, it's sold in ARC format. You're supposed to tell story in ARC formats. It's not this. We don't live in a day and age of ongoings, quote unquote. We live in a day and age of this story arc is collected in 6 issues. Move along, you know, and seeing that day in and day out and reading day in and day out. It's one of those like I get kind of the other end by being a retailer, knowing like, hey, this is how you sell a comics book to a fan. Because at the end of the day, all those metrics that they show, like, oh, Spider-Man's the most number one selling book this month. It's not because fans are buying it. They don't have metrics. They don't have access to those metrics. They're looking at the retail metrics, going, this store ordered 100 copies, that store ordered 50 copies, this store ordered 25, and that's how they're doing their metrics. Um, and I'm looking at it going, all right, cool. I can sell this to this person if this person comes in and they're looking for this book. Like, there's a customer I know, I don't name names, but there's a customer I know that comes in and she's a huge Red Hood fan. We got the Red Hood webtoons book in. And I was like on break and I came in. I'm like, oh, did she come in? And he's like, my boss was like, yeah. I'm like, oh, did you show her the Red Hood book? And he's like, no. I'm like, oh, she would have bought it immediately. And next week I saw her. I'm like, hey, did you see the Red Hood book? She goes, no. I showed her. She bought it immediately.
Hmm.
It's one of those like you get to know your customers and you get to see their likes and dislikes and understand the stuff that you're reading. And you're supposed to read everything, like even the stuff that's not your genre to read. Like I'm not a big guy into high fantasy, or I'm not a big guy into like magic books most of the time, but I read them. And if there's a customer that likes it, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to show you what you like. I'm not here to crap on the stuff you like because I don't agree with it. It doesn't matter. It's what you like. And that's what comic books are about. Comic books are for everyone. If you like this, that's your thing. I will show you and I'll walk you through the forest of a million other trash books before we get to the one you love, And that's kind of what I got my inspiration from. It showed me how to write and sell comic books better.
Now, as for your own personal taste, I'd love to know, like, what makes a book stand out to you then when you literally have all of them at your disposal at the comic shop?
My current collection and my current actual pull list, not the stuff I read for work, but my actual pull list I buy month to month is Power Rangers, everything Power Rangers,
Mm-hmm.
Radiant Black, anything Massiveverse, and then it's Justice Society and Superman and X-Men. And that right now, and I used to be a very diehard DC guy. I would buy when New 52 came out, I bought every single issue of every single series that was coming out. And then I just started realizing like I don't need to buy everything. If I think a series is starting to lack or I think it's starting to like fall off for me, I can drop it. But like the things I like, honestly, I'm a sucker for a good Golden Age style like book. Like I'm a big Justice Society fan. I love what Jeff Johns did for like the million years that he was writing Justice Society. It's one of the first heroes I got introduced to as a kid, and I look for books that are kind of not this overly dark superhero stuff that we got used to in the last like 10, 15 years. I like things like Tomasi's Run of Superman, where Superman's a dad. And this is well before I had a kid. So I liked Dad Superman. I like the I like stupid classic good versus evil stuff. But I don't like the cut and dry dichotomy stuff. That's I like good versus evil, but I don't like the black and white aspect
Hmm.
of it. Like good, you're good, you're morally good and that one's morally bad. Like I like the no, I can see kind of both sides to the argument. Clearly this one's very, very wrong, but like I can see where he's coming from type of storytelling. The first books I collected, even in trades, was like Civil War, which was a complete story about idealism and like choosing what you believe is the right side of an argument. And there is a right side because they both had facets that were right. So I kind of look for stories that kind of go back to that, where you can side with the good and bad, but like also have that kind of classic feel of like at the end of the day, they're superhero stories. I want a superhero story. I don't need dark, gritty nonsense. I don't need huge mega action set pieces to tell a story. Are they cool? Absolutely. Do I buy them do I love a good spread page? 100%. Do I want to see Superman punch Brainiac through a building? Yes. But I don't need it for the story. Like, don't add fluff and beefcake and boobs and skin and violence just to sell me a story. Everything that needs to be there should be there from the get-go. So I like a good kind of smaller, simplified comic book package.
Now, as we're wrapping up here, I do have a special wild card question of the week for you. I know you're literally writing so many stories right now of taking tokusatsu ideas and premises and doing your own spin on them, but if you could write an American comic adaptation of any one tokusatsu series, what would it be?
American. Oh, okay. I gotta pick one. Ooh, I might do Kamen Rider Gates
Hmm.
because I it leans into things. It's just battle royale with Kamen Rider. Which for an American audience would be Hunger Games with Kamen Rider. Um, that would be cool to do. That would be cool to do. No, no, I know the exact answer. It's actually Kikaider.
Kikaider?
Kikaider would be my absolute favorite because it does the wandering hero thing, and I love the music stuff. And it's Pinocchio. It's Pinocchio, but with robots and transforming and like cool conspiracy theory stuff. Yeah, I would do Kikaider for an American audience.
And you get to do Hokkaider as well with that, so like that's a big plus.
Yes, because that movie is wild. Um, but yeah, I would do Kikaider because I think people would kind of gravitate to the idea that it's like adult Pinocchio. It's it's cool because it would work with the stuff we're dealing with now as society with AI and technology and weird conspiracy theories that riddle the internet. Um, yeah, I would do a Kikaider adaptation for a modern audience. Boom Studios, if you're listening, I'm available.
Well, James, I know we've got the Kickstarter campaign live now for World of
Yes.
Nebulon. All our listeners, please do go look it up, find it. I'll link it in the show notes. And yeah, back the campaign and help them bring this idea to life.
Thank you. We are, as of recording, we're at 48%.
Awesome. And outside of supporting the campaign, where else can our listeners find you?
You can find me on Facebook because I'm an old fogey. You can find me there as James Santana. You can find me on Instagram at Vega Lawless 1226. You can find me on X as Vega Lawless 1226. It's my gamer tag also if you're on PlayStation or wherever. And yeah, you can follow the podcast, Android's Amazing Podcast, on Instagram at Android's Amazing Podcast and on X at Android's Amazing.
All right. Well, thank you again, James, for joining us today. Good luck with the rest of your campaign, and I really wish you the best with Toku USA. That's a very exciting idea for someone that's running a Tokusatsu Comics podcast.
Yes, and again, thank you so much for having me on the show. It means a lot to me, and thank you guys for listening. And thank you so much. It was an honor to be on your show and being my first ever real interview. Thank you so much for all this and the support.
Happy to have you. If the listeners at home have requests or recommendations for content you'd like us to cover in the future, you can send them our way on social media. You can find us on the Giant Sized Violence Facebook page, on Twitter is at UltraMegaCast, or email us at giantsizedviolence@gmail.com. I'd like to thank you for giving our podcast a chance and give a special shout out to artists Ray Day Parade and Dark Moon Home Video for designing our logo and cover photos. Our intro and outro music is You're an Ace Kid by Demon Dice from their album Alcatraz. Check out their EP Shut Up Get Happy on iTunes and Spotify. We hope you join us again as we continue to explore the world of Tokusatsu comics, but until then, take care and remember to do your part in preventing the spread of the kaiju virus.
Freedom can't be seen by downcast eyes. So raise your gaze until your 10 feet tall and shake your fist to the sky. Refuse to die or let them make you small, cause they love just to see you convinced you're just a brick in the wall. But you're not just a brick in the wall. La da 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 da.